Hello, my name is Dr. Arthur Maklunu. I've dedicated my life to providing surgical care to patients with heart disease. My life began in the slums of Soweto in South Africa, where I learned to overcome adversity and illnesses, including the death of my best friend. That's why I want to be a resource for you and your family for consultation related to heart and cardiovascular needs. You can learn more about me by visiting my website, which is at zulucheskada.com.
Impeccably dressed.
It's cut out for it.
It's just cut for it. Let me ask you a question, man. And it's sort of a sidebar, so y'all forgive me if I go too far. Let me ask you this question. Do you ever come out of uniform?
The answer to that question is no. No, well, you know, what they say is first impression is an everlasting impression. And it's very so often that you get a chance to change that first impression. So try to, you know, get the best the first time.
You know, I talked to a few people who are, you know, they detail cars. Mm-hmm. And one thing I noticed is that their car is always tight. And they said, well, if my car isn't looking good, then how can I advertise, you know, a detailing business if my car is dirty? Now, do you sometimes feel the same way in terms of your personal ensemble? Are you your own advertising car?
I am.
A walking billboard.
A walking billboard. And word of mouth, but more importantly, when you look good, you feel good, and when you feel good, you play good, and when you play good, you get paid good.
Okay, let me see. Feel good, work good, play good.
all the good stuff. Going back to the days of Washington, D.C. Of course, you and I, we played basketball against each other many times, and our friendship go way back.
I just want to know who won.
well, let's put it this way. George and I did the same thing. We were both scorers. We both played very well. And I would say that we're even.
Okay.
Everybody won. How about that?
Okay, that works for me.
So George, take us back. Take us back to the days in D.C. before you came up with this ideal of fashion. I mean, take us back and walk us through how that came about.
Well, you know, fashion has been around. For a thing in my business to deal with is a lot of us run in the same circles. So you're just talking about going to the ESPYs or the NBA All-Star games or conventions. A lot of the same people who you design for, money comes into play. And I never want to fall out of place with a friend over money. That's something that you just learn. And if it's $1,000, the guy takes it, he goes his way. The way I was raised, that's a small price to pay to get rid of a rat. Unfortunately, some of the people that come to me, they're not who they say they are. They buy things and then when it's time to pay, it doesn't get paid, but then you see them on television and you're like, wait a minute, I just sent that to him last week and I haven't received any payment. So then you don't hear anything, and then now you're chasing people for money, but you're chasing, high-end people. And when you go to these functions, you see them. So that
you can't just walk up to them.
That's the hardest thing. It's like, well, what do I say? He's got his wife there. He's got his family. You don't want to embarrass him. Excuse me, can we talk sidebar? But I said, you know what? I said, if he's a real man, he's going to do what he's supposed to do, and he'll be back, because part of what I do is I educate.
Yeah.
And I say, well, first of all, I'm going to give you the best product and the best fabric, and second of all, I'm going to educate you. Now, if you choose to go somewhere else for whatever the reason is, because people, that's just how we are. We always going to look for the best bang for our buck.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that you getting the best product. And if my motto is, I'd rather pay for it once than to have it and then have to pay for it twice. So That's right.
Now, George, for all of the men and women that are thinking about fashion, can you give a few tips as to what they should do in the beginning to, actually, work around all the wonderful things that goes along with fashion? And what would be one of the first couple things that you would say for anybody who's looking to get in fashion?
Well, I think that they need to do a self-internal check and see and ask themselves, do they have a PhD? Do they work with a PhD? And that goes for just not only in fashion, but any field.
Why PhD? Tell us what you mean by that.
PhD is, that's where you do things.
You feel good, you feel good, you play good, you play good, you get paid good. So we're going to get right into this with Dr. Marcus S. Tappan. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to find out what he's going to do to help make us feel good, help us look good, and help us play good so we can get paid good. Put your hands together for Dr. Marcus S. Tappan.
Very well said.
Now, many people have asked me, man, why in the world on a sports and entertainment show do you want a dentist on your show, and what relevance does he have to that? And the first thing I said to them is, you know what? They told me a long time ago, if I didn't wear my mouthpiece and I got hit, I'm probably not going to be as pretty as I am. So I said, okay, folks, before y'all laugh at that, I said, so right off the bat, I learned that concussions and some other things can happen to you if you don't protect your mouth. Now, did they tell me correctly?
They did. They absolutely did.
Okay, now, have you ever had the opportunity to work on the mouths of any athletes during your time in this business?
Oh, yeah.
And what kind of tremendous things have you discovered about us? You don't have to name names.
Oh, okay. I was going to name some names.
You can.
You can. It's okay. It's okay, Dr. Tapp. Name them.
Just to name a few, some of my celebrity clients are athletes. Kevin Durant is one of my patients.
Kevin Durant, NBA Finals.
Well, by the time this airs, NBA over.
But a long time ago, I started marketing my services to professional athletes. One of the reasons that I did, one of the reasons that I did, that's what kind of ties into your show, is because I wanted to have a platform to show exactly what I did. One of my first clients was Juwan Howard. I served on the board with Juwan on a board called Adoptions Together. We were on Butler, Steve Francis, a number of people have come through my doors for dental care. And as I said just lately, Kevin Durant has been one of my patients, and we're proud to display those pictures and, proud to say that we have worked on a few people.
Okay, a lot of times by the time we get to you, we're either not feeling good or we're not looking as good as we want to.
You guys
now, when I come to you, what happens then? So as soon as we walk in the door, I'm not really feeling good, or I'm not really looking as good as I want to. But what are you going to do with me when I walk in your door?
The first thing we do is an overall assessment. I really want to know why you're there and what can I do for you. If you're in pain, I want to get you out of pain. If you're there to improve your looks, I want to do that. So my first goal is to find out what's going on with you. And the way we do that is we go through a complete evaluation. We do x-rays, we take pictures. We want to know exactly what's going on with you. And then we want to learn what's your vision. Where do you want to go with your smile? Is it a health issue? Is it a cosmetic issue? Do you have cracked, chip, missing teeth? Do you want to look better, feel better? And as George said earlier, play better, make more money. I mean, it's all tied in together. And as people look better, their self-esteem rises. As their self-esteem rises, they do good in all aspects of life.
Well, one of the things that I would like to say on your behalf, Dr. Tappan, is yes, folks, I am a patient of Dr. Tappan, client. My wife also goes to Dr. Tappan. And one of the things that you have done for me, Dr. Tappan, which I am overly thankful for, is you've helped me get back into the health of dentists in regards to your teeth. For many years, I was frightened about going to the dentist because I had a bad experience, and I could not let that experience go. It created a fear for me that I couldn't let go for a while. But as a result of my wife, my daughter, my sister, pushing, I made it to your office. And I will say that you brought me back.
To you out there in the viewing public. Ladies and gentlemen, to my near right and your left is a young lady that we affectionately know as Dreas. Dreas has two pieces here, and basically I'm going to let her tell you very quickly the title and the purpose of those writings. Dreas, Fabric of My Intentions, your first title. Tell me a little bit about it.
Fabrics of My Intentions is a book of poetry. It's a book of collection. I like to say that I channeled from one of my distant mentors, Miss Maya Angelou.
Okay. So you picked good mentors.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I've been following her since I was about 6. Yeah, so I developed a collection of poems based on that. They're quirky, everyday poems, good pick-me-ups, good sister friend poems.
So super. Now, that's your second book, correct?
That is my second book.
And your first book, Embellished Truths.
Embellished
Now,
Truths.
I kind of like that title because we were talking to one of my guests before, and I was telling him how I sometimes embellish the truth as a way of kind of saying that we don't lie.
Okay.
But nonetheless, tell us a little bit about Embellished Truths.
Well, just like you said, Embellished Truths has the skeleton, has some
About your
traces.
projects.
Okay. My first book is Diamonds in the Rough, Life's No Fairy Tale. And this book is based off of 7 young women. The book's supposed to be relatable to every man and every woman, so I wanted to do something.
Relatable to every man and woman?
Every man and
I'm
woman.
scared.
Good stuff.
Now.
Yeah,
I'm scared.
Good stuff.
Yeah, it's supposed to be relatable to every man and every woman. I wanted to do something a little different.
Okay.
Kind of like create a soap opera through the form of novels, but a black soap opera, you know? The book's about yeah, my book's about 7 women and they start off really young. They don't have any guidance and they're trying to find their way. It's a story about heartache, pain, betrayal, and friendship. They come to find out that life's no fairy tale at all, and in their journey they meet these really intriguing men. Naturally, right? You have the
Naturally.
Naturally. You got the bad boy who now
You have
wants
to
to be
speak it.
good.
Okay.
The good boy who now wants to be bad.
Oh, these are characters. The
These are
bad boy
characters
wants to be
in
good. The good boy that wants to be bad.
Yes,
Okay.
actually. We got the knucklehead. We can't really tell him too much. He just knows everything.
Okay.
The one that displays sophistication. The $1 Million Man. You got the brother who's on the straight and narrow path now. He discovered religion and he's on the straight and narrow path. But an event that you mess with the things that's very precious to him, you can see another side. And you got the one that the ladies consider to be a playboy, but he really isn't a playboy. Maybe a little misunderstood, but you know, he's really not a playboy. He just knows how to treat the ladies, and the ladies aren't really used to being treated like that, so they all want to put him into a committed relationship.
Okay.
So it's something different, really, really
Well,
fun.
you just covered the entire male race. I mean, everybody that I know personally, you just described one of us in one way. Real quick, tell us about your other project.
Other book is about the superficial young lady. She's a bit of a mean person. She preys on the weak. She winds up going to Atlanta in my book, and she meets a young lady that's a direct opposite of her.
Okay.
Very timid, very shy, had a hard life, been in and out of foster homes. No friends. She's looking for love in all the wrong places. The young lady's a superficial. It's like, listen, girl, she has a mother, and her mother tends to put men before herself and before her children. So she's taking care of her brother. She's doing everything to her own ability, but she's still a child herself. So she's making a lot of, bad decisions. So she's going out into the world, and she doesn't really know what to expect out there when she's out there. Because she still has a sense of innocence to her, even though she's not 100% innocent.
Now, you trying to get a particular point across to your audience as you write about a radiance, or you're just describing a scenario?
I really want to be able to meet young women or young men where they are. If you was to give someone today a self-help book and say, here, read this book, this is something that's actually going to really help you. The odds of you getting them to actually read the self-help book is very, very slim to nothing.
Okay.
So my idea was generally to put something in there where they can relate to it and it's entertaining and they're actually learning a lesson in the process of it without even knowing that they're learning, in the process.
Okay, so you're gonna trick them into learning.
Yeah, so it's kind of like meeting them where they are and taking them where I want them to be.
Okay,
Yeah.
I gotta keep my eye on you. That's what Now, before Skip jumps into Andreas, now I had the chance to pop open one of your books and went into the first page, and quite frankly, you hit me upside the head with it. And then you kind of explained to me that it's gonna go in different directions, etc. But you kind of use that shock value to start out, and you describe a situation that I told you myself that, hey, this looks like some movies that I've seen. This looks like some stories I've heard. This sounds like some locker room talk. What is it, or how is it that you're trying to?
Well, actually, she never knew who she was, so she sets out on a journey to find out who she is. She has a grandmother in her ear that's trying to give her cautionary advice as that nothing's new under the sun that you're doing, but as we all have been there, she has to find herself.
Instead of just listening to a grandmother,
right,
she wants to
right.
experience these
she
things.
She wants to experience things. So.
And how's it working out for her?
She gets a few bumps and bruises in the process, and you have to read it to find out how it turns out. But it's a very exciting, very suspenseful book. Very suspenseful book.
Well, I heard someone mention a little bit earlier that some of what you've written and how you speak about it is somewhat powerful. And as you talk about it, I see that you really get into it, you really get into the characters, you really get into your writing. And obviously you used to really get into it on your job, but we're not going to talk about it. Right? But you also, from what I understand, are continuing your education right now. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I am finishing up my 3rd year at Morgan State University. And this is just my opinion, especially amongst women.
Okay.
So.
And why do you think there was lack of support among the women, especially?
Honestly, I think because of ego. Okay. I think because of ego. I think because of self-esteem a lot of times. Like we said earlier, that helped me to. I didn't want to be that type of person. Okay. So I wanted to be the change that you want to see. So that started me. That's why I shared my information with her, and she reciprocated that and shared her information with me. And so that's part of the mission of my book also, to encourage and to support, younger women.
Are you guys currently working as mentors? Are you doing a lot of mentorship, especially with young women who are inspired to either become an author or just inspired to just do the right thing?
We are currently accepting, anybody who's interested in having speakers. We've done a few things. Just did something with Diamonds on the Rise. We had a really beautiful experience there. A few things at Strayer University. So we are taking, more speaking engagements. And if someone wanted to book, they could book on email through info@tmdpublishing.net. Or what's your email?
Dreascamera.com, because we do think that it's important to share the knowledge of supporting one another and encouraging one another. And so that's the message that we try to incorporate in our speaking events, that everybody needs support. We try to use our stories as tools to help people.
Now, young women growing up in any area, urban area, Baltimore, or any other part of the United States of America, especially,
relate to, and it's a part of life.
Okay. Now, just as she has these multiple personalities, you had these multiple guys in one of your books. You had each type of man that I've ever come across. Right. So in 30 seconds or so, tell us what some of the messages you're getting across to these young ladies in terms of these guys.
Just 30 seconds or less. Just be careful in the decisions. Everything that glitters isn't necessarily gold. And sometimes you have to open up your eyes, and sometimes you have to start loving what's good for you and not exactly.
Gentlemen, I present to you our guest for the day, Mr. Kevin T. Robertson. Man, I'm glad to have you.
Kevin, welcome.
So look, very quickly, now that I got the formalities out of the way, we're going to dig right into it, because we all come from some kindred spirit here, and Kevin has a book and some other wonderful things that he's going to tell you about. I'm going to pass the mic over to Kevin very quickly, and I'm going to start out basically by asking Kevin, where you from, where you been?
I'm a product of Prince George's County, Maryland. I grew up in Prince George's County, born at Prince George's County Hospital Center in Cheverly, Maryland.
So your middle name is PG County?
PG County, man. PG County. And, I graduated from Eleanor Roosevelt High School. Okay. And, that's really where I started. My parents got me a trumpet when I was in the 4th grade. I'll never forget it.
Okay.
So that facilitated a lot of my talent in the Prince George's County public school system. I was very artistic. I was very poetical. Very early on, I knew that I had some special kind of gifts, and I always wanted to use those gifts. And it's a graduation up to what I'm doing right now. But that's where it started. I'm very proud to say that I'm a product of Prince George's County.
Man, God bless. Thanks a lot for that. Real quick, I know where you told me about the PG County area. I'm taping right here. from PG County, but we have this Southeast brother over here.
That's right. That's right.
And by the way, Kevin and I, we are very good friends, so we know each other.
Mr. Williams,
but we're still going to get down and ask all these wonderful questions.
So, because basically that line between Southeast and PG, it's
very, very close. If you don't know, Southern Avenue and then Prince George's County. That's
right.
a closer proximity for you.
Thinking he's always locked, or he or she is always locked into the most powerful radio station in the world. It's WIIFM, which is radio station What's In It For Me.
Okay.
So when you're receiving a message, all you care about is what's in it for me.
Are you going to say something that
it's going to uplift me?
That's going to benefit me?
Benefit me, that's right. So I have to speak to you in benefit language. And most people, they come into your office and just start talking instead of saying, how can I be of service to you? They say, what can you do for me? This is why I'm here.
Skip's going to hit you real quick, but before he does, how would you know what benefits me if you're talking to a room full of 300 people and they're all coming from different dimensions and domains? How do you speak to them in a way that benefits one out of all of those 300, Kev?
Okay, Skip, he asked me, so I'm going to answer it.
Here it comes, folks. I hope you're ready for this. I hope you're ready.
All right, look, I'm scared. Y'all weirding me out. Because I don't.
I want to give you two names, and I want to see if you could just tell us what category they fit in.
Okay.
Gabrielle Union.
Gabrielle Union. She is without a doubt. She is a relator. She has a very strong attractive force.
Okay.
Money, people, and opportunity always move to people with that type of personality.
Okay.
She's very humble. She's very, very sweet. You just want to touch her, Skip. Do you understand what I'm saying
I
to you about her? Okay.
Yeah. I understand.
Yes,
My wife,
very nice.
this is Kevin talking, not me. I'm agreeing with him because Bubba Grimes told me to agree. Sharon, when you see this, I am not guilty.
Skip,
okay?
Skip, we'll make sure nobody touches you.
Yeah.
You straight. But who's the second person?
Russell Simmons.
Russell Simmons. Russell is a thinker. Russell is a flat-out thinker. He's very meticulous in detail, very driven. He has an overachiever gene built in his DNA. He's, pays attention to detail. But also on the back end, Russell's also a director as well. You know, he's definitely, you don't get to where he is by not having control. And there's nothing wrong, by the way. I mean to tell you, there's nothing wrong with having a controlling personality.
Oh, I'm cool with it.
I've learned. No, here's what I tell you. I've learned that if you don't know yourself, if you don't know where you're going, you don't know when to turn right or left, and you don't have a plan, somebody else will come up with a plan for you, and I guarantee you won't like it too much. So it's a place and time for everything. So what makes up the four major personality types, again, which are thinker, relator, director, and socializer, you have to pay attention to really become good at it, people's strengths, limitations, characteristics, and tendencies. And that's all I study. If I'm looking around the room...
Yeah, let's talk about that study a little bit. Where does that study come from? How did you get to the point where you begin to understand this, input it, output it? What were some of the things that you did over the last 21 years to get you to the point where you're sort of an expert on it?
Study and research.
What does that mean?
If you want to be an expert, you need to read about 100 to 200 books to become a subject matter expert.
Say that to me one more time.
If you want to be an expert in a particular field, you need to read at least 100 to 200 books in that field.
Mediums, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to and put your hands together for Mr. Dave Ungrady. Dave, welcome to the Roland Grimes Show.
Happy to be here.
Dave, look, we're going to jump right into it. Why Len Bias? What made you decide to do this? I know everyone is asking you. Tell us what was on your mind, partner.
I had written two previous books about athletics at Maryland.
Okay.
And I was an athlete
Maryland, University of Maryland. Gotcha.
Yes. And I was an athlete there in the late 70s and knew a lot of people who were affected by Len's death.
Okay.
One being the athletic director, Dick Dole, who was a assistant coach on the track team when I was on the team, and he was a mentor of mine. Still is. I know him very well. Okay. And I saw the documentary, the 30 for 30 documentary with Len Bias. I saw it came out in the early 1990s, and I thought it might be time to do something not about. And I looked at the books, most focused on how he died and the immediate aftermath.
Okay.
I wanted to do something on his legacy, how his death affected things. I knew how it affected the athletic department at Maryland. It had quite a traumatic effect on the department. I knew about the Anti-Drug Abuse Act of 1986. I wanted to find out more about it. That act was passed directly because of Len's death, and it changed the way drug offenders were penalized against a lot of young black men, by the way.
Okay.
And there was a lot more to it. I wanted to talk to the teammates, how they still felt about it, how they recovered from it. Found a lot of lessons of resilience, and I knew it would be a compelling story, and it really turned out that way.
Okay, look. my co-host ran in some of the same circles, played on some of the same circuits, and he had sort of an intimate connection with Mr. Bias himself. And Skip, you had some things you wanted to bring forth in our conversation. I'm going to sit back and enjoy this conversation more than normal.
Finally, Roland's going to sit back and enjoy this conversation. We're talking basketball here. Now's my time, so stay tuned. It's going to be good.
Prelude to the Mr. Self-Empowerment Show. Skip.
Well, Dave, one of the things that when I think about Len Bias, the first word that comes to my mind is greatness. Lenny had greatness written all over him. My family knew Len Bias. I
never got a response back. I would like to know why. I understand her resistance because it is a tough situation. As a journalist, but I saw that she talked to other people. She talked for the documentary. She did even recently did interviews for other members of the media. I'm not faulting her for that, primarily because I don't think anybody few people in our lifetimes that we know have gone through what she's gone through. Not only with Len,
I don't know anybody,
but with Jay as well. So right. I give her the benefit of the doubt. I just wish I knew why. I did go to see her speak at a school in Pennsylvania, and I still write about her in the book and talk to other people about it, and how her career has evolved as a very prominent speaker and a successful speaker. And her speeches was very powerful. And I even went up there hoping that she would face-to-face have a discussion with me. She declined that as well. So it was frustrating. Maybe someday we'll talk about it. I did meet her at one, she spoke at the University of Maryland about a month and a half ago, and I was told to just try to get up there, and I was there otherwise for something else. And we did meet very briefly before her speech, but I didn't want to broach that subject because she was about to talk. So we talked for about a minute. It was nice to talk with her, but nothing's really coming.
Okay. Now you're a big boy.
I'm a big boy.
And,
I'd like to think I am.
And we had a chance to talk off camera. You know, I'm a straight shooter.
Right.
You know, so what folks are going to ask, and it's okay because you're prepared to deal with this, and I know this just from our conversation. Folks are going to ask why, and we need to make sure that we use it in such a way that we educate, inform, as well as entertain, but also bridge gaps where they exist. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to ask you to take a quick break. This is Roland Grimes from the Roland Grimes Sports and Entertainment Show. We'll be back to you shortly. Thank you.
Why didn't you go to Maryland?
I need to get away.
Makes sense.
When you look at a lot of the athletes, they take these agents who don't understand where they come from, and they forget that the agent works for them. So the agent ends up putting them in situations where they're investing in stuff that they don't know anything about. They're doing causes and charities that they don't know anything about. And a lot of athletes go in saying, I want to give back to my community, I want to do this and I want to do that. And they get steered away from that. These agents then in turn, they lure them with the cars and the jewelry and the money. It happens in music as well. So then they get thrown off course. So I think that they have to get somebody strong in their camp. And they can't just look at the Lee Steinbergs and say, well, he got this athlete this X amount of money. He needs to ask the agent the question, well, what can you do for me for the long run? Okay. Not the short term, but the long run.
All right, now, here's the deal. Now, I went through that process, and I'm having these conversations with these agents, and all of them are telling me basically what it is that I want to hear. Now, unless I missed that memo, for the most part, you won't know that you're being steered in the wrong direction from somebody in your camp until you're actually at the end of your rope or you're into that line and you say, uh-oh, I've been steered in the wrong direction. Hey, it's too late because now my
pass it over to me. I'll take the assist from Roland. Well, I beg the difference with you in regards to the family member. And the reason why I say that is because I'm not sure about some of the other folks' family or your family or all the people that are watching this show, but I have some very dear family members, like my father, for an example, who's deceased. Wilbur Skipper Sr. would have been the best assistant to an agent that I could have ever had because he had all the discipline, he had all the tools and fundamentals that I would have needed in order for this agent, whoever that person may have been, to make sure that they're doing the right thing.
Okay, that's a given. Now, here's the deal. Now, my daddy, you know, to this day, I have no qualms, no concerns about him having some integrity and some scruples about dealing with anything that I'm involved in. But let's face it, 75% of the people who are going into the pros in any sport do not have those kind of folks around.
And that's why I said you got to hire somebody who knows the business,
Well,
and that knows
Air
you.
Jordans to the 240 shares of Nike stock.
Well, the first thing I would say is peer pressure. And again, you do not have to feed into the peer pressure, but it takes a special and unique person to be able to do that. If you want to fit in, you want to be a part of the Joneses, then you're going to do the same thing that those people do that are part of the Joneses. You have to set yourself apart. Now, when I was playing basketball at Southeast Community College, by the time I left Anacostia High School and found myself 2,100 miles away from the Washington, D.C. area in a town of 5,100, and there were only 11 blacks in the town, and I was one of those black athletes. You talk about culture shock for me, but this is where it started for me.
In Nebraska.
In Nebraska. Started for me. Now, a lot of kids that I talked to that had previously went to Southeast Community College, Nebraska, from the Southeast Washington, D.C. area, they came back after 3 weeks because they could not handle it. Now, why am I saying this? I'm saying this for a reason. For me, that's where it started. I mean, it started before that, but that's when it really got deep for me. I realized that in order for me to pursue my goal and my dreams, which was to become an NBA basketball player, that I had to be a little different from what was set up. Now, by the time I signed a basketball scholarship to play at George Washington University, there were a lot of different things in place then that you were supposed to do if you were going to be in the in crowd. Well, I took the opposite route. Now, a lot of college basketball players, football players, they get caught in a zone. I call it a zone.
Okay.
I call it this narrow place where if 10 or 15 people are in and you're not in, then they're looking at you as being an outcast.
Right.
Now, can you handle that?
Well, I mean, not only that, but Malcolm Gladwell in his book Outlier talks about this outlier being such a tremendous asset to our country, to our world, and the person you just described as an athlete when you were in Nebraska is outlier. Well, quite frankly, outliers sometimes get shot, thrown into the river, and they get cut from the team, or other things happen because you're not walking in step with what's already in place. What happens when you have artists or you have an athlete and you have this program in place and it's artists? So, again, welcome back. As always, we're shooting live here at our new location, DD's Coffee House, Main Street, Upper Marlboro, Maryland. Just want to welcome you back to the Roland GRIMES Sports and Entertainment Show. As always, I have my resident archaeologist, Mr. Self-Empowerment himself, ladies and gentlemen, Wilbur Skipper. And I have a distinguished guest here with us today. He has a book that actually he and I were talking a little bit offline earlier, and I was listening to his amazing story, but I thought it best for him to tell you as much about the story himself, because I can't even do justice to it. Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to introduce you to my guest right now, Mr. Donnie Manning. Okay. Donnie, I'm going to give this a try. Skip and I were, we had a small wager backstage.
I lost.
All right? To see if I could pull this off. Humdadeo.
Well, actually, you lost the bet.
Okay.
No, it's close.
Okay.
But it's Humdadeo.
Humdadeo.
Very unique name.
Yes,
Very unique.
Yes, it is. Well, you got to be unique.
Tell me what that means.
So, once you read the book, you'll know exactly what the name is.
All right, give me an idea. Give me a sneak preview of what some of that significance is and how you came up with the title. That will help me a lot.
Well, it's interesting. You mentioned how you came up with the title. The title has to do with something that the character in the book is attached to. So it's hard for me to tell you any more than that.
Stay tuned.
You know what I mean? It's right.
Well, you want to give away your trade secret?
Can't do that. Can't do that. You know?
Stay tuned. Well, actually, I have a couple questions for you.
Right.
I'll start with the first question. You are a very talented young man, and actually your talents go way, way back. At the age of 9 years old, you first did your first talent, or you discovered your talent, or maybe your first song?
I probably wrote my first song, but I wanted to do it. He thought it was out of necessity because he had to try to provide. Now, in my case, I had a strong mother.
Okay.
So there was no drug slinging on my part. Okay. But I saw enough of my peers, friends that got involved in it, that I could tell the story. So in the story, this kid started slinging drugs, but a policeman saw that he was not a thug. In other words, the thug is a mentality. He was a criminal just by nature of what he did. If you steal a pencil, you're a criminal.
Now let's go back to that for a second. Thug is a mentality.
Thug is a mentality.
Okay. Elaborate on that a little
Well,
bit.
see, a thug, because that's what, and I go around the schools tell a lot of kids, a thug will hurt first and then think later if he thinks at all. So that's what these thugs do. If you even think, if you hesitate before you do anything wrong, before you pull the trigger, you're not a thug. See, that thug life, they will.
It's unconscious or subconscious.
There is no conscience to it. So this kid was not a thug because he had he thought about
thought
things.
process.
Yes, he did.
Okay.
So a policeman knew that the streets would eat him up. So he helps him. He gets him into the school, and he was a bright kid. He became a lawyer because he wanted to be a lawyer to deal with the things that he felt.
He became a lawyer.
Yeah, he became a lawyer because he wanted to deal with things that he felt the system was kind of like out of whack. So he became a lawyer, and he married his childhood sweetheart, and they moved to New York, and they had a little daughter. And the book talks about the relationship between the father and the daughter because that's one of the strongest bonds that there is. As a matter of fact, on the cover of the book, that's my daughter right there. So I know about that bond, you know. But what happens in the book, he, unlike a lot of us who grew up in that environment, once we start making money, legal money, we don't know what to do with it. Okay. No one told us about investing. So we buy things when we get it. Cars, clothes.
A lot of materialistic things.
Yeah, that's the only thing, you know?
Also the only thing.
That's the only thing. So, because I had a successful carpentry company at an early age. Okay. And, you know, a friend of mine, I got into this, he embezzled money from and we went belly up. And I had bought cars and trucks, but I didn't invest anything, so all my liquid assets were gone. And for a time period, and I had a wife and 2 kids, we were almost homeless, but we had a place to go, thankfully. But in this case, this kid, once he became a lawyer, and he spent all his money, his accountant told him he needed $100,000 just to keep that Bentley and that Jaguar he bought for his wife and keep his daughter in this prestigious school.
So I know where this is going.
You know where he goes back, but not in the hood. He didn't want to get involved in slinging drugs again because he sees the fallacy in that. He knows
from the legal side.
From that legal aspect. But one of his friends is now a loan shark, and he tells him, "Well, I'll give you the $100,000 a day cash money, but it's 50 cents on the dollar, 30-day payout." That's the system. In other words, you got 30 days to totally pay me out. There's a line in the book where he tells them, you know, I'm not a beauty salon, so I don't do extensions. You know, you got 30 days to get your laugh.
I hate to laugh at someone's misfortune.
But you know?
That's a lot.
Can we borrow that line? Can we have it? You heard it, folks. We can have that line.
We call it professional plagiarism. So you
man, like you already.
So he gives him, he tells him 30 days, and if you don't, he said, if you don't have my money back in 30 days, I'm not going to harm you. But that pretty little girl, she's history, and he knows that. And he tells him before he gives him the money, will you accept what I'm about to offer you? And he does.
Okay. Excuse me.
That's basically what Benjamin is, and this first installment of When Dark Secrets Get Darker, the Benjamin Bishop investigation, he's investigating the suspicious death of a successful businessman.
Mr. Murray.
Ronald Murray, exactly. Right.
I knew Ronald Murray. Anyway,
we do our homework.
He's investigating the suspicious death of Ronald Murray, as you said, who's a popular businessman and well-known sugar daddy. And that's how the story begins and unfolds.
Okay, real quick, when I ask you this question, I'm going to turn it over to Skip. Let me ask you this. Now, what made you, of course, everyone's going to say, what made you decide to write a story about Benjamin Bishop, the private investigator, investigating crimes in Baltimore, and then why did he get stuck on Ronald Murray? What's the big deal?
Well, I wanted to showcase Baltimore, and I've always been into detective stories, mysteries, unsolved mysteries, something that draws the reader in, and make you want to try to figure out who did it, just as the investigator's trying to figure out who did it. You know, I'm a big fan of Walter Mosley's writings, James Patterson, Prague, the Capitol. I went to Cape Coast. I went to the slave dungeons. There's one in Cape Coast, and there's one in Elmina. And it's funny because, well, not funny, but there were 47 slave dungeons all throughout West Africa. 37 of them were in Ghana alone.
Wow.
Yeah, imagine that. 37 were in Ghana alone.
So who was enslaving the slaves in the slave dungeon?
Well, you know, I would.
They were enslaving other Africans.
Right. But these were a lot of the dungeons that were established by the Europeans.
Okay.
First, the Portuguese, because the Portuguese were the first ones They were the first ones from Europe to implement slavery and then do the whole transatlantic slave trade and everything. They were the very first ones. But prior to them, a story that's not told too often, but the Arabs were the very first. But that's a whole nother story. In terms of how we know it, slavery in Americas, the Portuguese were the first, and then so on and so forth.
The European connection as opposed to the Asian, African, Asian.
Exactly. And I filmed all of that while I was there. I filmed all of the stuff that I visited inside. I mean, the way I came up, you never believe in hearsay. Yeah. You want to see it for yourself, right? So that's what I wanted to do.
Well, no, I don't want to find out if people eat me. I don't need to find that out for myself. Look, tell you what, just call me, send me a text or email, say, look, they wrong, they eating people over here. I don't need to go. Look, I don't need, hey, I got a lot of courage. I don't need to go find out if people eating. So I'm glad.
Well, you know what?
That you came back to tell us that that's not what's happening, because I heard the same thing. But I'm glad you straightened that out. Skip,
I'm surprised.
So that really unnerves a person. Hey, but look.